A new vision for the Q, the plan to transform this aging football venue into a hotspot for higher education.
The notion that we're going to track every Western Union, bit of money that's being sent to Mexico, good luck with that.
Firing back at another immigration proposal from the Republican frontrunner, the reality of paying for Trump's wall along the border. And San Diego's craft beer industry has been barreling full speed ahead in recent years, but troubles could soon be bubbling to the surface. This is Evening Edition on KPBS. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabolsi. With the San Diego Chargers moving forward with plans for a downtown stadium, discussions are heating up on what can be done with Qualcomm Stadium in Mission Valley. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen has details on one group's vision for the future of the Q.
A panel of developers presented their plans this morning for turning city-owned Qualcomm Stadium into an extension of the San Diego State campus. They would demolish the existing stadium and build a smaller one in the northeast corner of the property, seen here in the upper right. The rest of the 166-acre site would be student and faculty housing, research, educational, and park space. The presenters say this is the poster child for smart growth because the site is already connected via the trolley to SDSU's main campus. The university president supports the ideas included in the plan, but the developers say he hasn't come out with a full endorsement.
There are multiple other visions floating around, and we encourage dialogue on all viable plans and on all ideas that may be attractive and possible. As it relates to the universities, we've gone out of our way to make sure that they know what we're doing and to make sure that they're aware of what we're doing. But obviously, they need to digest this just like everybody in this audience needs to digest it.
The plan presented today would cost an estimated $170 million, likely coming from donations and partnerships with the private sector. But the presenters stressed it's just a conceptual vision meant to start a public dialogue. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
It was Wisconsin's turn today. Voters there began casting their primary picks in both the Republican and Democratic races. Heading into today's primary, Donald Trump leading the way with 736 delegates for the Republican. For the Democrats, Hillary Clinton is ahead with 1,243. At stake today, 42 delegates for the GOP, 86 for the Democrats. PBS NewsHour will have the latest on the election results. Stay tuned for that at 7 o'clock. Donald Trump says he's going to stop Mexican immigrants from sending money to their families south of the border unless Mexico agrees to pay for a 2,000-mile wall between the two countries. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero has the story.
Mexican immigrants sent their families about $24 billion last year. Trump says he's going to block the flow of these remittances unless Mexico pays up to $10 billion for a wall at the border. I spoke to a Mexican immigrant who works at a San Diego laundry facility. She says she sends most of her wages to her family in the Mexican state of Sonora. She says she doesn't think Trump's plan is fair.
This makes me sad because I work so hard. My family over there has kids, and sometimes they don't even have enough to buy them little shoes.
President Barack Obama called Trump's plan half-baked and impractical.
This is just one more example of something that is not thought through and is primarily put forward for political consumption.
He says paying for the expensive border wall could collapse the Mexican economy, which he says would increase illegal immigration to the U.S. Mexican leaders, including the president, have said Mexico won't be paying for any border wall. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
San Diego Congressman Darrell Issa is calling on the federal government to include his district in the national conversation about where to store nuclear waste. Issa sent a letter to the Department of Energy today saying that the storage of nuclear waste at San Onofre is of particular concern to residents. given our proximity to an active fault line and the population density of San Diego and Orange counties. The department is holding 6 public meetings around the country in the coming months, but not in San Diego. Currently, the U.S. does not have a long-term solution for storing the millions of tons of nuclear waste generated from plants around the country. The waste at San Onofre will be stored on site indefinitely. As Attorney General Kamala Harris runs for a U.S. Senate seat, some consumer activists worry her Democratic Party loyalties are influencing how she is conducting a crucial criminal probe. Harris is investigating how customers got left with most of the costs for the closure of San Onofre nuclear power plant following a radioactive leak. KPBS investigative reporter Amita Sharma says Harris launched the probe with a punch, but ratepayer advocates say it now drones on, devoid of result.
With one search early last year, Attorney General Kamala Harris upended the story state regulators and a utility were telling consumers. The California Public Utilities Commission and Southern California Edison had claimed a deal that left ratepayers with a $3.3 billion bill for San Onofre's closure was the product of hard-fought negotiations between ratepayer advocates and the power company. But when Harris secured a search warrant for the La Cañada Flint Ridge home of former PUC President Michael Peavy, a different story emerged. Investigators found handwritten notes that showed Peavy had met secretly with an Edison executive in Poland. There, they came up with a framework for a San Onofre settlement that closely resembled the final agreement.
That was one of the most remarkable pieces of investigative work that I've ever seen in the last 40 years.
It was the kind of work that San Diego consumer attorney Mike Aguirre says makes people fall in love with their leaders. But he contends Harris is now jilting her constituents.
And there was no follow-up.
6 months after Harris's investigators raided Peavy's house, the Attorney General obtained another search warrant. This time it was for the centers of power in the San Onofre case, Edison, and the offices of state regulators. But Harris's investigators never went in. Inexplicably, they handed the warrant to both Edison and the PUC, asking them to turn over all documents and communications related to the San Onofre settlement. Aguirre, who is a former federal prosecutor, called that approach half-hearted.
You don't drop it off on the front door and say, hey, gee, send me your records. That's the whole point of a search warrant, is that you go in and you execute the search warrant and you seize the records because you're concerned that they're going to disappear.
He argues using the full power of the search warrant is essential if the public is ever to get justice from state regulators and Edison.
There's just so much momentum behind the unlawful conduct that the search warrant is really the only device that you can use unless you have some sort of wiretap.
So far, Edison has turned over some records to the Attorney General, but the PUC has withheld many of the documents, alleging limited resources and claiming they are privileged. Harris has not challenged the PUC's privilege assertion. Former San Diego federal prosecutor Jason Forge says the Attorney General would likely prevail if she did.
The PUC is the state, and so if the PUC is the state, so the state is the client, well, that's who controls the privilege. That's who is capable of waiving it. And so the person at the top of the state is Governor Brown, and he could waive the privilege.
But Governor Brown's own office has exchanged emails with the PUC discussing San Onofre. The PUC is refusing to release those emails. The only person who has pushed the agency to make the communications public is Aguirre, not Harris. Aguirre was also the one who asked for a judge to be removed from the case because he'd gone to law school with Governor Brown. Aguirre says it's puzzling that Attorney General Harris hasn't made such efforts.
She has no presence. She has no involvement. She has no leadership. You have no sense of her being out there on the front, saying, we're charging forward to do what's right.
Harris has also remained silent on another part of the case. The PUC's law firm is representing both the agency and its employees. Forge says the practice is frowned upon by prosecutors because it intimidates potential whistleblowers.
They know the same person representing them is representing their supervisor and is representing their supervisor's supervisor.
Harris could ask a court to require the PUC to retain separate counsel. She has not done so. Consumer advocate Charles Langley believes the politics of Harris's Senate bid is influencing her investigation into San Onofre.
This is a scandal that very likely will implicate Governor Jerry Brown, a powerful Democrat. We've got a scandal that will implicate actually Michael Peavy, who is accused, a very powerful Democrat, and Michael Peavy's wife is an elected, powerful Democrat. So this is really going up against the Democratic Party system here, and I think it's very distressing to her when she's considering a Senate run to be going up against some of the state's most powerful Democrats.
Harris has a record fighting white-collar crime as Attorney General. She set up a mortgage fraud task force, and she obtained $18 billion from the nation's biggest banks for their role in the foreclosure crisis. She is also investigating whether ExxonMobil misled the public and shareholders on what it knew about climate change and whether that amounts to securities fraud. But the Attorney General's office declined to answer any questions about the inquiry into the San Onofre settlement. A spokesman says the reason is to protect the integrity of Harris's investigation. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
And KPBS video journalist Nick McVicker helped produce that story. Another fallout from the massive gas leak in Los Angeles. We're now learning there may be power outages lasting for a couple of weeks this summer. LA Mayor Eric Garcetti called for more energy conservation from residents today. Energy experts blame limited operations at the Aliso Canyon natural gas storage facility. They say this may lead to electrical service interruptions. The gas leak was capped after 4 months and forced thousands of neighbors to move. The federal government has approved plans to build a solar power plant in California's Mojave Desert. The Soda Mountain Solar Project will be located in San Bernardino County, 6 miles southwest of Baker, near Interstate 15. It's expected to provide enough electricity for 86,000 homes. Environmentalists argue that the plant would block a travel route for bighorn sheep. As a vacation destination, home to Comic-Con and soon to be host of the All-Star Baseball game, San Diego sees a lot of tourism. It also makes a busy city a prime location for human trafficking. Here's more on how San Diego is staying vigilant. A busy summer in San Diego means more than bolstered tourism revenue. It's an opportunity for groups involved in human trafficking and child sexual exploitation to continue their activity among the thousands of tourists who flow in and out of the city. The Safe San Diego Hotel Motel Human Trafficking Awareness Symposium was developed to train hotel and motel employees to recognize the signs of these crimes. County District Attorney Bonnie Dumanis says the FBI considers San Diego a high-intensity area.
Yes, it is frightening, and that's why we're trying to get the message out to the public in general that everybody should be on the lookout, because it's our kids, our precious resource, and we don't want them to be victims.
Mike Staples with the San Diego County Hotel Motel Association says San Diego's upcoming high-profile events put the industry on high alert for red flags.
If somebody can slip in and use us for as their landing ground or their office, that's an embarrassment to us. But if it goes undetected, that's the shame on us.
California is one of the nation's top 4 destination states for human trafficking. Exploring the relationship between sitting around and cardiovascular risk factors. A new project from UC San Diego's medical school are investigating any links in Hispanic women. The $3.7 million multidisciplinary project will take 4 years. Researchers say Latino women have a higher risk for developing diabetes. This is a strong risk factor for heart disease. Hispanic women are also likely to develop heart disease 10 years earlier than others. A bill heard today by the state Senate aims to improve the safety of school buses. It got support from the mother of an autistic teen who died on a hot school bus less than a year ago after the driver failed to make sure the boy made it off the bus. The bill proposes an alert system that would deactivate after the bus driver walks to the back to check for any students left behind.
In addition, it would actually, for the first time, allow the DMV to revoke the license of a driver who has left the child behind, because right now there is no such thing. So right now, these incidents are not reported, which my bill also not requires they report. So it's a lot of things the bill will do above and beyond just having them do their job.
Supporters say the alarms cost about $150 per bus. Similar alarms are already installed on buses in the Los Angeles Unified School District. California's Chief Supreme Court Justice stopped by to honor a San Diego school today. Kumeyaay Elementary was recognized for its commitment to civic education. The awards are part of a learning program led by Chief Justice Tani Cantil-Sakaue, who spoke to students this morning on the importance of learning about the justice system.
Because the reason you engage in civics, the reason you engage in critical thinking, the reason you're in science and determining who the suspect is because you're ensuring liberty and justice for all by what you're doing here.
Kumeyaay Elementary is just one of 3 California schools receiving the civic learning recognition. Enjoy the sunshine while you can, because rain is on the way. Steph Davis has the details in your KPBS weather report.
Dry conditions so far for our Tuesday across much of the Golden State. Satellite and radar showing quiet conditions from the Four Corners all the way towards the California coastline. Further north you go, clear skies. However, here across Southern California, you'll notice on our satellite those clouds really starting to build in. And that's kind of been the case today. Cloudy, some fog earlier on today, but at least we will remain dry. Now that pattern will change as we look ahead to the late week. So get out and enjoy the tranquil conditions while you can, because we're looking at some wet weather as we look ahead towards the late week. For tonight in Borrego Springs, cloudy and mild. Your overnight low is 59 degrees. Mount Laguna falling back to the mid-40s. 53 tonight in Alpine, cloudy, and 48 in Ramona. Clouds building into Oceanside, though dry. Your low is 51 degrees. 60 degrees is your overnight low in San Diego. High pressure remaining in control for the midweek Wednesday, allowing pleasant conditions for the Four Corners and Nevada. Meanwhile, heat will continue to build across Southern California. We're looking at another dry day, but as I mentioned, that will change, and we'll take a look at those details in your extended forecast. Here's a look at your 5-day outlook for the coast. Some sunshine, watch for fog early Wednesday morning. Your daytime high is 72, and then here comes the rain. Thursday and Friday, a shower or two. Rain later on in the day on Saturday, and we'll finally dry things out as we look ahead to Sunday. 5-day outlook inland shows a similar pattern. Fog lifting for sunshine Wednesday. Daytime highs comfortable around 75 degrees. Keep those umbrellas handy if you're heading out for Thursday and Friday. A couple of clouds and showers building in, and then we're looking at some wet weather Saturday, mainly later in the day. Finally drying things out inland for your Sunday with periods of sunshine returning, and your high at 67 degrees. Clouds and sunshine in the mountains Wednesday. Daytime high comfortable around 70. Cooler on Thursday as temperatures drop to the mid-50s with a shower or two. Still a shower or two in the forecast Friday. Wet weather rolling through later on Saturday. Still some lingering showers possible in the mountains for your Sunday. Wrapping things up with your 5-day outlook for the deserts. Partly sunny and hot out there Wednesday. Daytime high 97 degrees. Exercise caution in this extreme heat. Cooler with showers on Thursday. Your daytime high is 80. Still some lingering moisture Friday and into Saturday. Temperatures cool off into the 70s. Showers still possible as we wrap up the weekend Sunday. Steph Davis, KPBS News.
The San Diego Padres made history last night, and not in a good way. They were on the receiving end of the worst opening day shutout in Major League Baseball ever. The LA Dodgers beat the team 15-0. The previous most lopsided opening day shutout was more than 100 years ago when the Pittsburgh Pirates beat the Cincinnati Reds 14-0 back in 1911. Now, San Diego will try again tonight in Game 2 of their 3-game series against the Dodgers. San Diego's craft beer industry continues to grow. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson says there are signs the rate of growth may be fizzling out.
A new study of the region's craft beer cluster found that sales climbed over $850 million last year. The National University System Institute for Policy Research study found direct employment was just over 4,500 jobs. Now, the sector continues to expand as brewers meet demand for their craft brews, but there are concerns starting to creep in.
Access to capital, so financing was actually something that we saw that resonated as an impediment to growth for the local industry. And number two, we found that real estate was also a serious concern, as well as distribution.
Actual beer production numbers in San Diego are bigger than the craft brewing totals because large local brewers St. Archer's and Ballast Point were bought out by large beer conglomerates last year. They still do the majority of their brewing here in San Diego. But the presence of out-of-town companies trying to tap into the local craft beer market has created anxiety among local brewers. The craft beer industry is also concerned about the ongoing drought in Southern California, water a key component of craft beer. And more than 40% of local brewers surveyed said they were very concerned about the water supply. Another 50% say they were somewhat concerned about the availability and cost of water. The study concludes that local public policy leaders will likely have a role to play as the industry continues to face challenges moving forward. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
When you think of John Leguizamo's array of talents, you may be surprised to find educator as one of them. With his new solo show, Latin History for Morons, at the La Jolla Playhouse, an education steeped in comedy is exactly what he intends to give his audience. And John, you started doing solo shows in the early 90s. What was that like to break out of television and film and start doing theater?
Well, you know, I started really small. I started with like one character, and then I would do it in all these. We had a lot of performance art spaces in New York back in the day when it was affordable. And I would just do one character, then that would be a hit, and then I'd work on another one, and pretty soon I had like 10 of them. And so I was used to it, being alone on stage by that point when I had my Mambo Mouth was the first one. But it was wild. I mean, Sam Shepard came to see me, Arthur Miller. I mean, I was beside myself that these great playwrights were in my house watching me.
Right. Now, what made you decide to venture into historical territory with this show?
Yeah, well, this show is a departure for me. You know, I do a lot more biographical and socially relevant stuff. I just, you know, talking to my son, who's you know, 15, and he asked me, you know, do we have any Latin heroes that have done anything? And I was thinking, you know, Pitbull, Sofia Vergara, you know, we do great food, we dance well. But I knew we had to have something a little more impactful. And I started doing research, and it was crazy, the information that I found out. The floodgates opened up, and it's like we were there in the American Revolution. We were there, War of 1812. We were in every war, Civil War, 10,000 Latin people fought. And you never hear about these things. I mean, people who contributed big time, 500,000 Latin people fought in World War II. That's a massive number of people and heroes, and you never, ever hear about that anywhere.
So would you say that this show is, in a sense, filling in holes in history, perhaps giving contributions to people who made contributions that were not credited to them?
I hope it's a wake-up call. You know, I hope it makes a difference, and I hope a lot of people go out there and go, you know, start Googling and doing research and realize that these people need to be included in textbooks, movies. You know, Hollywood's Oscar so white situation, it doesn't need to be. There's so much material of great Americans that are Latin that need to be done.
So this enriched your own sense of historical knowledge.
Oh yeah. You can't get me to shut up now when I go to some political meeting or something. I belong now. Yeah, you know.
Okay, so can you give me an example of something that really surprised you, maybe?
Well, during the Revolutionary War, there were so many generals that were Latin fighting, and they were Mexicans and Cubans fighting, and Cuban women in the South who were living in America took all their jewelry and their household belongings, sold them to feed the troops in the South. And then you had generals fighting up down the Mississippi, keeping the British from eating. And I mean, you never hear about these great heroes. It's crazy.
And what about the timing of the show? Obviously, in the political landscape, we're getting a lot of dialogue and discourse about immigration. Yeah. How does the timing of this show fall into that for you?
Well, I guess pretty lucky in some ways, you know, considering Trump's comments and even Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. I mean, I don't understand the hypocrisy of that. I mean, Marco Rubio's dad was an immigrant, and he was lucky that he was accepted, and then he's going to be against immigration. You know, knowing that you have these heroes and putting them in their proper place in history would make a big difference. I mean, if all kids and all Americans were learning about all these heroes that contributed in World War I, Vietnam War, and you realize how many Latin people have sacrificed their lives to keep democracy and keep this country free, you would feel different when Trump says something and calls people names like that. I mean, I think you would be much more outraged, and not just Latin people.
Okay, obviously, history and what we're talking about now is quite serious, but your show is a comedy.
Yeah, it's a hilarious hook.
But do you find oftentimes that through comedy you can educate?
Oh, definitely. It's much easier to smuggle information with humor than it is to be straight, pedantic. I'm going to educate you. Nobody wants to hear that. Right. Yeah, so I mean, I'm hoping definitely eventually to go to high schools and take this show. So it's got to be mad funny because teenagers won't put up with that nonsense.
Great. John Leguizamo, author, actor, playwright, and now, would you say educator? Educator,
Hillary supporter, you name it.
Thank you, John.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate it. And John Leguizamo's Latin History for Morons opens tonight in the La Jolla Playhouse.
I'm Gwen Ifill. On the next News Hour, the challenges of protecting students' privacy in the digital age. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
Okay, so a sea lion walks into the Marine Room and scores a free trip to SeaWorld. This is actually not a joke. Marine Room executive chef Bernard Guias joined the SeaWorld crew this morning to help the sea lion go home. She was found inside his restaurant in February. No word if she got a chance to review the menu, though. After 2 months of rehabilitation at SeaWorld, she was nursed back to health. She gained 25 pounds during that time, and she also displayed an ability to forage for food necessary for survival in the wild. That's when SeaWorld experts say she was ready to go home. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. From all of us here, thanks for watching.